All right, so get ready to dive into the upcoming Fantastic Four movie, The Fantastic Four, First Steps. We've got some interesting articles and notes about how this movie, especially with that retro-futuristic setting, could be really, really funny. And so I brought in an expert to kind of unpack all the comedic potential this film has to offer.
Yeah, what's really fascinating about this is that the 1960s setting, it isn't just like a stylistic choice, you know? It's like this comedy goldmine waiting to be explored. Like, imagine the Fantastic Four, these guys with, these crazy out of this world powers, and they're trying to navigate like a world where a rotary phone is like the most advanced technology.
I know. I'm already picturing, like,
Oh,
Mr. Fantastic trying to explain, like, his scientific theories to someone who thinks that the moon landing is, like, the peak of human achievement.
right.
Talk about a culture clash.
Exactly, exactly. And we can't forget about the fashion, It's those iconic blue suits but with a 1960s twist,
Oh, yeah.
like maybe bell bottoms or even a Nehru collar on Mr. Fantastic.
Oh, a Nehru collar.
The visual comedy, it just writes itself.
I love it. And you mentioned in your notes that you were really interested in seeing how the Fantastic Four function as, like, a family unit.
Yeah.
And I think the decision to skip the origin story actually plays into the humor here.
Yeah.
Like, we're not wasting time with the how and the why of their powers. We're jumping right into the dysfunction and the, like, bickering and, the love-hate relationships that make the Fantastic Four so relatable.
Yeah, it's like a family sitcom, right?
Totally.
But with superpowers and cosmic threats thrown in for good measure.
Right, exactly.
Like, imagine Thanksgiving dinner with the Fantastic Four. You've got the Thing trying to pass the gravy with his rocky hand. You've got the Human Torch accidentally setting the centerpiece on fire. Sue Storm making the mashed potatoes disappear with her invisibility powers. I mean, it's just chaos. But it's hilarious chaos.
I love that. Okay, but let's talk about the elephant in the room, or rather the planet-eating entity, Galactus. How do you, like, bring humor into a story where the fate of Earth is at stake?
Yeah, well, I think the key is contrast,
Yeah.
You have these, like, godlike beings with these crazy cosmic powers, and then you have the Fantastic Four, this dysfunctional family, just trying to, like, hold it all together. And I think the humor comes from that clash of scales. Like, the absurdity of trying to fight a planet-eating giant while also dealing with your brother's teenage angst.
Right.
You know?
Speaking of teenage angst, I noticed you highlighted an article about the potential for comedic tension between the Human Torch and the Silver Surfer.
Oh.
Is there something going on there, like, romantically?
Well, the article basically speculates that the Human Torch might have, a bit of a hero worship crush on the Silver Surfer.
Okay.
Like that teenage fascination with someone who seems so cool and powerful.
Right.
Like, imagine Johnny Storm trying to impress the Silver Surfer with his fire blasts, only to get completely ignored.
And let's be real, who
Yeah.
wouldn't be a little smitten with, like, a shimmering cosmic herald?
Yeah.
But how did that play into, like, the overall comedic tone of the film?
Well, it adds another layer of absurdity to the situation, You've got the world on the verge of destruction, and then you've got this teenage superhero who's, like, pining after a cosmic entity who probably doesn't even notice him.
Right.
It's a great opportunity for some slapstick humor, awkward encounters, and maybe even a few heartfelt moments that just turn into comedic gold.
So we know this film has an incredible cast, Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn,
Yeah.
Evan Moss-Bachrach. They're all known for their comedic timing. What are your thoughts on how their, like, individual styles might contribute to the overall humor of the film?
Oh, it's going to be amazing. Like, Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic, it's an inspired choice.
I know.
He's got that dry wit and stoicism that just contrasts perfectly with the chaos around him.
Yeah.
Imagine him trying to maintain a sense of order while, like, the world is literally falling apart. It's the perfect recipe for deadpan humor.
And then you have Joseph Quinn as the Human Torch.
Oh.
I can already picture him delivering, like, those snarky one-liners with that signature British charm. He's going to bring a real energy to the role. I bet his interactions with, like, the stoic Mr. Fantastic will be hilarious.
Oh, absolutely. Like, Quinn's energy is definitely going to clash with Pascal's, more restrained approach. And that's where you get the comedic friction. And then you have Evan Moss-Bachrach as the Thing. And he's known for his dry, almost cynical humor, which is, like, a great counterpoint to the more over-the-top personalities in the group. Imagine him cracking wise while literally made of rocks.
Oh, I love the idea of the Thing being, like, the voice of reason, the one who cuts through the drama with a well-placed sarcastic comment.
It's like they took the classic grumpy grandpa trope and they gave him superpowers. Like, I can already picture him rolling his eyes at Johnny Storm's antics while simultaneously saving the world.
And let's not forget, like, the visual comedy potential of someone made entirely of rocks trying to navigate the world. I mean, can you imagine the Thing trying to use a rotary phone?
Or trying to dance the twist.
Yes.
The physical comedy possibilities are endless. And you know Marvel's going to take full advantage of that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Okay, so we've talked about the individual characters, but what about the Fantastic Four as a unit? Like, what are some comedic scenarios you can envision them getting into?
Well, you mentioned that you're curious about how they're going to handle the Fantastic Four's powers, right?
Right.
In a 1960s setting, what if they're seen as a threat?
Okay.
Like some sort of communist plot.
Oh, that's interesting. So instead of being celebrated as heroes, they're viewed with suspicion and fear.
Exactly. Imagine them being chased by, like, government agents in black suits and sunglasses, all while trying to stop Galactus from, devouring the Earth. It's like a Cold War spy thriller meets a superhero comedy.
I love it. I can see it now.
Oh,
Like the Fantastic Four hiding out in a beatnik coffee shop, trying to blend in, while Reed Richards is like desperately trying to explain the science behind Galactus's arrival using only a chalkboard and a slide rule.
and meanwhile, Johnny Storm is hitting on the waitress in his best attempt at, like, beatnik slang, completely oblivious to the impending cosmic doom. It's that contrast,
Right.
between the extraordinary and the mundane that makes it so funny.
Totally. You highlighted a section in one of the articles about the potential for like misunderstandings between the Fantastic Four and people from the 1960s. What are like some specific examples you can think of?
Well, imagine Storm, the Invisible Woman, trying to explain her powers to someone who's never even seen a special effect in a movie.
Right.
They might think she's a ghost.
Yeah.
Or some sort of alien spy.
Or picture the Human Torch trying to explain that he can fly by, flaming on. People might think he's talking about joining the Communist Party.
Exactly. It's a recipe for hilarious miscommunication and cultural clashes. And let's not forget the music.
Oh, the music.
Imagine the Fantastic Four battling like a giant monster while a cheesy 1960s pop song plays in the background. It's that, like, unexpected juxtaposition that can create a truly unique comedic experience.
I'm thinking something along the lines of Sugar, Sugar by the Archies playing as the Thing throws a punch at Galactus. Like, it's so absurd it works.
Absolutely. It's that kind of unexpected humor that Marvel excels at. And with the Fantastic Four being such a visually dynamic team, the potential for slapstick and physical comedy is huge.
I'm imagining a scene where Mr. Fantastic is like stretching his arm across a crowded street to reach something, and he accidentally knocks over a line of those like iconic 1960s scooters.
Or picture the Thing trying to squeeze into a tiny Volkswagen Beetle. You don't even need dialogue for that to be funny.
It's like a live action cartoon, like come to life. You mentioned that you were really interested in seeing how the film incorporates like those visual gags and that classic 1960s aesthetic. What are like some specific visual elements you're hoping to see?
Well, I'd love to see them embrace the vibrant color palette of the 1960s. Think like bold, primary colors, psychedelic patterns, and those like iconic futuristic designs that people imagine the future would look like back then.
It's like a cross between the Jetsons and Austin Powers.
Exactly. It's that blend of kitsch and futurism that can create a truly unique visual experience. And I think it will lend itself perfectly to the comedic tone of the film.
I'm all for it. Like the more over the top, the better. But let's not forget that this film is part of the larger MCU. Like, how do you think they'll incorporate the Fantastic Four into that established universe while still maintaining this unique comedic tone?
Well, the humor in the Fantastic Four movies has always stemmed from their family dynamic.
Right.
Their bickering and their very human flaws. And I think that's something that can easily translate into the MCU.
So we can see them interacting with, like, other MCU heroes?
Yeah.
Maybe even poking fun at some of the more serious characters.
Absolutely. Like, imagine the Fantastic Four meeting Captain America, who's still adjusting to life in the 21st century, after being frozen for decades.
Right.
The culture clash alone would be hilarious.
Or picture them trying to explain the concept of social media to Thor.
The comedic possibilities are endless. And I think it's that ability to blend humor with heart and action that makes the MCU so successful.
I'm with you on that. They managed to walk that fine line between, like, being funny and still taking the characters and the story seriously.
And I think the Fantastic Four, with their unique blend of, superpowers, family drama, and now a 1960s setting, are the perfect characters to bring that kind of humor to the MCU.
Before we get, like, too carried away with our own fan theories, I want to bring it back to you. Like, what specifically are you hoping to see in terms of humor? in the Fantastic Four? First steps. What kind of jokes or like comedic scenarios do you think would work best with this particular team in this setting?
I think for me, it's all about seeing those classic, like, Fantastic Four dynamics play out in this new setting. Like,
Right.
imagine, right, Reed Richards trying to explain his latest scientific invention using, like, terminology from the 1960s.
Oh my
It'd be
God.
like
Oh,
watching a professor try to, like, teach a class using only an abacus and a chalkboard.
right. And then you have Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. He's all about like flash and style,
Yeah.
trying to fit in with the cool kids of the 1960s.
Yeah.
I could just see him trying to, impress everyone with his fire powers, but they're all just like more interested in the latest dance craze or, rock and roll band.
It's just the perfect recipe for, like, some classic fish out of water humor.
And let's not forget about Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman. Like, think about the pranks she could pull in a world where people haven't even imagined the concept of invisibility.
Oh, she could cause absolute chaos.
Yeah.
And no one would even know who to blame. It's like the ultimate stealth comedy.
You mentioned in your notes that you're, like, interested in seeing how the film balances the humor with the threat of Galactus. Do you think they can pull that off?
I do. I think the key is to never let the humor, undercut the stakes of the story. Galactus is a serious threat.
Right.
And the film needs to acknowledge that. But at the same time, the Fantastic Four are known for their ability to find humor, even in, like, the darkest of times. It's part of what makes them so endearing.
Yeah. It's like that classic saying, right? Laughter is the best medicine, even when you're facing, a planet-eating cosmic entity.
Exactly. And I think the 1960s setting actually lends itself to that kind of humor.
Mm.
It was a time of, like, great change and upheaval, but also a time of optimism and a belief in the power of, like, science and technology to solve any problem.
So the Fantastic Four, with their own kind of unique brand of like scientific ingenuity and can-do attitude, fit right in.
They're like the ultimate embodiment of that 1960s spirit, even if they are a bit, dysfunctional at times. And I think that's what's going to make this film so much fun to watch. It's a celebration of that era, but with a modern twist.
Okay, so to wrap things up, what's the one thing you're most excited to see in terms of humor in the Fantastic Four? First steps.
I think for me, it's all about seeing how they use the 1960s setting to create, truly unique and unexpected comedic moments. Like, I want to see jokes that could only work in that specific time and place.
Right.
I want to see them play with the culture clash and the technology gap and just, like, the overall sense of naivete that defined that era.
Well said. I think we're both on the same page here. We're ready for a Fantastic Four movie that's not afraid to, like, embrace the absurdity of the situation, that lets the characters, be funny and flawed. And that ultimately leaves us with a smile on our faces.
And maybe a few new catchphrases to add to our vocabulary.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
Now, for all of you listening, we want to hear your thoughts. What are you most hoping to see in terms of humor in the Fantastic Four? First steps. Let us know, because we're always up for a good laugh. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep those funny bones tickled.